It's all about control there. Pharaoh has control of the people. And Moses has to trust. The people have to trust who's really in control. It looks like Pharaoh's in control, the world that they looked at. Do you trust that God's in control? That's the promise from the very beginning of the Bible to the very end of the Bible. God is in control. I think the problem is, for many of us, even though we might say we believe that promise, God is near and we trust in God, we might state that over and over. We might state, I believe God is in control, but then when we look out at the world, much like Moses, much like the people of Israel, we might say, I don't see any real control. It looks like chaos out there. I see warfare, I see pain, I see things that I don't understand. How can God be in control? Even if we don't use those words, that might be the feeling inside of us. And it might be as we look at the greater world, but even in our own lives. We can look at our own lives and sometimes we can feel like this is all just chaos. I had an experience last weekend, last Saturday morning. My boys are in soccer. Well, two of my older boys are in soccer, not my youngest boy is not in soccer yet. But my two older boys are in soccer, and I had this experience. I guess it's not uncommon. A lot of parents get to experience this. But I got to witness, I was not taking part in it, but I got to witness my first parent soccer fight. So parents are getting out there and getting pretty wild. I mean, the kids were getting a little excited. I mean, they're 9-year-old kids. It's 9-year-old soccer. And so the 9-year-olds are out there, and yeah, their kids are getting bonked around because that's what happens out there. But then to hear there was some shouting from the other side of the field, and there was a parent who was swearing, who was shouting at our kids, and then suddenly parents are on the field, and then our parents feel like they got on the field, and then but it wasn't like parents just taking their kids like, hey, let's get out of here. It was almost like it was fuel to the fire. Like parents were out there, and it looked like parents were ready to fight, and then kids did start swinging at each other once the parents were out there. It's not like they were taking their kids away. Their kids are now fighting, and they're still in the middle of it, and it's just like, wow. So if we can't control a 9-year-old rec soccer game, how are we going to say there's control in this whole world that we live in, right? How are we going to say that? There's just there's no control. It's completely out of control. I was thankful, I will say my son was not involved in the fighting in any way, shape, or form. He was not there and didn't rush to get involved either. So you know what, I'm thankful for that. But it's just like, what chaos we live in. And then my other son's in 6-year-old soccer, and they said, well, we have to worry about this other mom, I guess, on this other team because every week she's tried to start a fight. And it's just like, well, what a world. Chaos, formless and void chaos that we live in. And I think if we ask the question, who's in charge here? What makes sense? Is God really in charge? I think when we actually put voice to that question, it's very important. That question shows up over and over in Scripture. It's the question of the Israelites in the Exodus. It's the question of people throughout the Bible asking themselves, can I believe that God is in charge? What if I don't get a miracle? What if these things aren't happening for me? What if it's all just chaos? And it's an important question. It's a biblical question. I think it deepens our faith when we really start to ponder what these questions are all about. And so today, before we dive into that Exodus story, to Moses and to try to wrestle control from Pharaoh. Before we can get there, I wanted to start actually in the first book of the Bible because it's one of the first things that God promises is that God is in control here. That very first chapter in the book of Genesis, it's one of my favorites, but it tells the creation story in a poetic form, not the scientific form, but in a very poetic form. It tells the creation story. And it's saying God's creating all things, and God's creating things that would be labeled clean, things that would be labeled unclean. And God says all of them are good. Human beings, all human beings, not just the people of Israel, but all human beings are good and very good in the image of God. And part of the language that really stuck out for me today, it's something that as I was rereading the story of the Exodus and looking at this story, one of the things that stuck out to me was how often the word sight was used. You know, in the book of Genesis, it says God saw that it was good. God takes time to see and sees that these things are good. And it's not lost on me that even later on in the book of Genesis, with that tree of good and evil, in that story, that still can speak to us in many ways. Instead of seeing the good, God looked at everything and God saw the good. When we look at the world, it's like we're predisposed, or at least I'm predisposed to seeing the evil, everything that has gone wrong. It's what I'm tuned in for. Even, watching some movies. It's like, want to watch a movie where you have a clear bad guy, and who am I supposed to hate in this movie? And I got to get angry about something. Predisposed to it. And it shows up all over in our world. What am I choosing to see? And what we choose to see, that's all over the Exodus story too. Because God still sees the people. It's one of the first things that's stated in the book of Exodus, that God sees the people. He sees their misery, their pain. But God's people have forgotten. They've forgotten each other. They've forgotten God. They've forgotten where they came from. The only thing they can see as a society is hopelessness.